Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari
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 Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana
Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana
Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana
Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana
Yamuna Tira Vanachari
Yamuna Tira Vanachari
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada
Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada
Jaya Nama Sankirtana Ki
Jai
Prabhupada Ki
Jai.
Antakoti Vaishnava. This is
You have to plug in.
Hare Krishna. We're back. Hare Krishna. Can you hear now okay?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, we can hear you.
Okay. So the internet went out.
Yeah, we thought so.
Technology. We are so dependent on so many things. Power cords, internet. So, okay. So just get started. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Hare Krishna devotees. So welcome to this Chaitanya Caritamrita discussion. We're discussing from Madhya Lila, chapter number 20. So we last time we spoke about the end of chapter 19, in which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is instructing Srila Rupa Goswami on the topics of pure devotional service. Anyabhilashita shunyam gyanakamari navatam anukulena Krishna anushilanam bhaktir uttama. This uttama, highest bhakti, is one that is free of all desires, no motive. The only motive for the devotee in rendering service is to please Krishna. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explained the different moods of pure devotional service, and how in the Vaikuntha Loka planets there is the mood of worship with awe and reverence, and a more intensified love and rasa that Krishna experience of bhakti is experienced when there is no awe and reverence, when there's this feeling of intimacy, this personal relationship with Krishna. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went on to explain these 5 rasas, and how each rasa, from Shanta rasa to Dasya rasa to Sakya rasa, Vatsalya rasa, Madhurya rasa, they build upon each other, and how each adds a little bit of a flavor, and each rasa carries the experiences and qualities of the prior rasas. And so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was explaining this, and now we come to the pastime of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructing Sanatana Goswami. So this the title of the chapter is "The Lord Instructs Sanatana Goswami." So we'll discuss a little bit about Sanatana Goswami's arrival in Varanasi, where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is now situated on his way back from Vrindavan. You know, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu reached Vrindavan after much endeavor, and now he is on his way back. He has left Prayag and reached Chandrasekhar's house, and his association with Chandrasekhar and Tapan Mishra here in Varanasi. So we'll discuss the arrival of Sanatana Goswami and his questions and answers. So Sanatana Goswami will be asking some questions, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will begin to answer them, and we'll cover the 4 main topics that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is going to explain to Sanatana Goswami, and this explanation is going to take us through 4 chapters of Chaitanya Caritamrita. So there are 400 verses in this chapter alone, And there are another 3 chapters to come in which they will carry the contents of the instructions to Sanatana Goswami. So very elaborately this is being described. And we see in other parts of Chaitanya Caritamrita, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is speaking about certain topics. He is touching on just the highlights, or certain topics he is skipping because they have been covered in other books, and he doesn't want to make this book too voluminous. So he is being very mindful of where to apply emphasis, where he is going to spend time, and where he's going to accumulate more content, if you will. And so by dedicating 4 complete chapters to this conversation, we can understand the great importance it has. And when we read, what we find is a lot of wonderful philosophy. So this section is rich and heavy in philosophy, and really breaks down the science of devotional service. And we'll see that towards the end of today's discussion. So there's a lot to pull out from these. Now, given that we are covering a large number of verses that are being read in the morning reading group, every morning these devotees are gathering and reading, I think from 9:15 until 10 o'clock every morning. So they're covering many, many verses. So we're just going to give an overview or a glimpse into some of the concepts and topics. But of course, many of these verses require their own class or discussion on them, because there's so much depth of philosophy being covered here. So bear in mind the approach we'll be taking as we try to cover a lot of these verses. But we'll try to hit some of the highlights and pull out some of the key points that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was making. And hopefully by this discussion, we become inspired to come and read these verses again and again with the purports, and really study them in more detail. So that is the goal of these discussions that we are having, to pull out some points, but also to inspire us to read in more detail, as the group is doing already every morning. So very, very grateful for the service all of those devotees are doing in that wonderful endeavor. So today we'll read specifically from verse 123, the purport, and then we'll kind of back up to the beginning of the chapter and cover what happened in the prior 122 verses, and then we'll go forward a little bit until about 156. I understand that's where the group left off today. We're covering 2 weeks worth of verses, because last week we did not have a conversation. So, no worries. We'll go through it and discuss it. So, verse 123 reads, Sastra Gura Atma Rupa Apanare Janana Krishna Mora Prabhu Trata Jivere Hayagyana. Translation: the forgetful conditioned soul is educated by Krishna through the Vedic literatures, the realized spiritual master, and the super soul. Through these, he can understand that the Supreme Personality of Godhead as he is, and can understand that Lord Krishna is his eternal master and deliverer from the clutches of Maya. In this way, one can acquire real knowledge of his conditioned life, and can understand how to attain liberation. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Being forgetful of his real position, the conditioned soul may take help from Shastra, Guru, and the super soul within his heart. Krishna is situated within everyone's heart as a super soul, as stated in Bhagavad Gita 1861, Ishvara Sarva Bhutanam Hridesha Arjuna Tishtati Brahmayam Sarva Bhutani Yantra Rudani Mayaya. The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart, O Arjuna, and is directing the wanderings of all living entities, who are seated as on a machine made of material energy. As the Shaktavesha Avatar Vyasadeva, Krishna teaches the conditioned soul through the Vedic literatures. Krishna externally appears as a spiritual master and trains the conditioned soul to come to Krishna consciousness. When his original Krishna consciousness is revived, the conditioned soul is delivered from the material clutches. Thus, a conditioned soul is always helped by the Supreme Personality of Godhead in 3 ways: by scriptures, the spiritual master, and the super soul within the heart. The Lord is the deliverer of the conditioned soul and is accepted as the supreme Lord of all living entities. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 18:66, Sarva dharmam parityaja ma'amekam sharanam vraja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami ma suchaha. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. This same instruction is found throughout all Vedic literatures. Sadhu, Shastra, and Guru act as representatives of Krishna, and the Krishna consciousness movement is also taking place all over the universe. Whoever takes advantage of this opportunity becomes liberated. Om Jnana Atimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurumilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagadatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parinana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavari Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So, as I mentioned, this chapter is entitled The Lord Instructs Sanatana Goswami. So we may recall at the beginning of the 19th chapter, we heard about Sanatana Goswami's ploy to retire from government life. He was the prime minister for Nawab Hussain Shah, a very dear and capable servant of the Nawab. So important that he was instrumental in managing all of the affairs of the kingdom, such that the Nawab was free to go out and conquer other lands. And so Sanatana Goswami was performing, very great service to the Nawab, and but he was detached from this service, though he had a very powerful position and great financial means coming from that position. He wanted to retire, and his brother Rupa Goswami had already left his job as finance minister and taken to on his way to Vrindavan, met Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at Prayag. We discussed that last time. So Sanatana Goswami, after being, pretending to be sick, as we remember, and so he called in sick and called all the devotees to his house, and they were studying Srimad Bhagavatam, and the Nawab personally came himself after his doctor reported that he is not sick, he is just studying Srimad Bhagavatam. And when Sanatana Goswami refused to come back to work, the Nawab had imprisoned him and put him in prison. So now in the 20th chapter, we pick up from that point, and Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is explaining the very sweet way in which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu got himself, Sanatana Goswami got himself out of jail so that he could then reunite with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and then ultimately with Rupa Goswami. So Sanatana Goswami is in jail in the beginning of this chapter, and he is speaking to the jailkeeper, and he is speaking very sweet words, and he is calling him a very educated and learned man, somebody who has studied the Quran. And he says, that it is very good for you if you release a conditioned soul from imprisonment, it is viewed very favorably upon you, and so you should release me. So Sanatan's first attempt at getting released from the jailkeeper was to, glorify him and speak, big words and give him position. Often we butter people up to get something we want, right? But the jailkeeper was not so swayed. So then Sanatan Goswami moves to, attempt 2. Okay, if that doesn't work, now what do we try? So he bribes him, and he offers him 5,000 gold coins. That's quite a large sum of money 500 years ago. So he offers him 5,000 gold coins. And, the jailkeeper is starting to, warm up to the idea. But he says, no, I cannot let you go because the Nawab will become very mad at me and he'll punish me. And so Sanatan Goswami says, no problem, just tell him that I went to go pass stool near the river, and I jumped into the river with my shackles, and you had looked for me, but I had died. I had passed. And he said, don't worry, I'm not going to hang around here in the kingdom. I'm going to Mecca to be a mendicant, so I'll be out of your sight, and so just don't worry, here's your excuse. So the jailkeeper was, thinking, and Sanatan Goswami understood, I need to up the ante, if you will. So he then says, okay, and he gives him 7,000 gold coins. And finally, the jailkeeper cuts his shackles and releases him. So we know everybody has a price, right? Everybody has a price. And Sanatan Goswami, he tried with sweet words. It did not work. He tried with 5,000 gold coins with some logic, giving him his escape clause. That did not work. Finally, 7,000 gold coins. Of course, Rupa Goswami had left with the grocer, as we remember back, many thousands of gold coins for this specific purpose, to get Sanatan Goswami out of jail. Rupa Goswami knew he would need some income to get him out, and so very intelligently was arranged, and Sanatan Goswami thus got himself out. Interestingly, in the purport to verse 6, Srila Prabhupada is speaking about getting out of the imprisonment of this material body. And this material body is entrapped here, and Maya, the illusory energy, is so powerful that she convinces us of so many amazing things. And Prabhupada gives a very graphic example that the conditioned soul, conditioned in this life, in the body of a worm or a pig, is enjoying stool. Such a dirty, filthy thing. Maya is giving the illusion of that to be the source of enjoyment. So this is how powerful Maya is. Quite scary, actually. And so thankfully, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he begins to instruct Sanatan Goswami, is going to show us how to very easily overcome this Maya. So Sanatan Goswami had escaped his imprisonment, and he began traversing the different tracts of land. And he came to a region of land where it was going to be very difficult to cross. It was very hilly, and he needed a guide because, of course, he had to stay off the main roads. Right? He was a fleeing. He was a fugitive, if you will, in English terms. So he was running away, and so he was taking the back roads, and he came across a tract of land there, and they came upon one, like we say, and we can compare it to a hotel, but a kind of a forest hotel, if you will. And there Sanatan Goswami and his servant Ishan had come, and this hotel keeper had one palmist who could see somebody and understand their situation, and particularly if they had any wealth or not. This hotel keeper was basically a dacoit, a robber, and he would steal from his guests if they had great money. So the palmist said that these people are carrying 8 gold coins. So the hotel keeper became very intrigued. So he started to make nice facilities for Sanatan Goswami. You please come, stay here, take some rest, and then my men will take you at night, and they'll help you cross the hill to the other side very safely. And so he gave some foodstuffs and preparations for Sanatana Goswami to cook. And like this, Sanatana Goswami is cooking and preparing. But Sanatana Goswami understood that, wait a minute, this shopkeeper, this hotel keeper, he's being too nice to me. Something is up. And we see his great, Sanatana Goswami's great intelligence. And of course, Krishna's Kaviraj Goswami says, in verse 22, because Sanatan had been fasting for 2 days, he cooked the food and ate it. However, having formerly been a minister of the Nawab, he began to contemplate the situation. It means Sanatana Goswami was very, well versed in these material affairs. Though he was fully in spiritual life, he understood how things work. And so seeing this nice treatment, he had some doubt. What is the real intention of this hotel keeper? So he asked Ishan, are you carrying any wealth with you? And Ishan said, yes, I am carrying 7 gold coins. And so immediately Sanatana Goswami says, okay. And he went to the shopkeeper, the hotel keeper, and said, here's 7 gold coins for your trouble, and I'm giving it to you as payment to get me across this track, because he knew that this man was after his money. And so the hotel keeper replies, oh, you are very amazing, that my palmist had told me you had 8 gold coins and you come here to give me 7 gold coins. I was ready to kill you tonight and take all of your money, but now I'm feeling that you have saved me from this sinful act. So you keep your money, and my men will still cross you over the tract of land. I don't want your money. And Sanatana Goswami said, I don't want your money, that money either. If you don't kill me, the next dacoit will. And so he insisted, you take this money. And so Sanatana Goswami gave him the 7 gold coins. And we see this again, great intelligence. And Srila Prabhupada demonstrated this in so many of his amazing pastimes. I remember one sweet pastime, the early days, some of the early disciples in New York, they had been cheated by one businessman, and they had taken a deposit of $5,000 for a property, and they were basically cheating him. And for quite a long time, these 2 devotees were trying to get the money back, and these are Western Americans. And this was like a big-time New York financier, and very powerful and influential guy. And he was basically messing with these 2. And so Srila Prabhupada finally said, fine. After many efforts, he said, I'll take care of it. And he wrote them one letter. And in one letter he wrote, immediately the check came for the $5,000, and he got the deposit back. This is a Swami from Vrindavan dealing with a New York financier. And he wrote such an intelligent and perfect letter that the money came back immediately. Srila Prabhupada was very, very intelligent. When Brahmananda bought the first dictaphone for Srila Prabhupada to aid in the translating of books, when he went to the store, this was a very new piece of technology where you could speak into the microphone and you could start and stop the tape to carry your message, and then it would get recorded, and from there the devotees would hear that and type it into the transcripts, and that really accelerated the translation process. So Brahmananda spent like an hour and a half or quite a bit of time with the shopkeeper learning how to use this very new piece of technology, and he learned all the different tools and how to use it. So when he was coming to see Srila Prabhupada, he was thinking, okay, now I have to explain all this to Srila Prabhupada. This is an old man from the village, So he goes to Srila Prabhupada and sets the dictaphone on his desk, and Srila Prabhupada gets it out and just starts chick chick, and Brahmana's like, here, let me show you. No, I know how. And he just chick 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 and knew how to use it all. He had perfect knowledge of how to use this very modern piece of equipment, where this young man took hour or 2 in the store to learn. Srila Prabhupada just knew it. So we see in these devotees wonderful intelligence, even in what we think are like kind of external affairs. So here Sanatana Goswami understood the mood of this hotel keeper and was able to save himself from trouble by relinquishing these coins. Of course, As that pastime continued, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked, I think you still have some more wealth, Ishan, right? Because the palmist said 8 gold coins, and Ishan had said 7. So he had kept 1 gold coin back for himself. So Sanatana Goswami said, you take this 1 gold coin and you go back to your family. And now I'll continue on alone. So from that point, Sanatana Goswami, having crossed the hill with the men of the hotel keeper, had now crossed that tract of land and was traveling by himself. And soon after some time, he reached a town where actually he runs into his brother-in-law. His brother-in-law, Shrikant, was there buying horses for the emperor that he was working for, and so he had quite a bit of wealth. He was also a very powerful personality, materially speaking. And so he saw Sanatana Goswami in very mendicant dress. Clothes are dirty, and so he said, you stay here for a few days and let me feed you and change your clothes, and you should look nice. And Sanatana Goswami says, I don't want to stay here another second. I am on a mission. And so he asked, please help me cross the Ganges. So Shrikant helps him cross the Ganges. And at crossing, he gives him one nice wool blanket to take with him, to keep with him as he to accompany his travels. So Sanatana Goswami, like this, continues. And he finally reaches Varanasi, and there he understands that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has reached and is staying there, so he is very, very ecstatic. And so, how Sanatana Goswami arrives is also very sweet. So he goes to the doorstep of Chandrasekhar, and he just sits outside. This is a very dear and intimate associate of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Doesn't even knock on the door. He's feeling very shy and embarrassed and humble to be in the presence of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he just sat outside the door. But of course, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, being the all-knowing Supreme Personality of Godhead, knew that Sanatana Goswami had arrived. So he told Chandrasekhar, there is a devotee at your door. Call him. Go outside. So Chandrasekhar goes outside. He looks. There's no devotee. No one's here. What is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu talking about? He's all-knowing. So he goes back to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and says, there's no devotee outside your door. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, was there anybody outside your door? He says, yes, there is one bearded, Muslim mendicant outside my door. He says, okay, call him in. Chandrasekhar, really? Okay. So Chandrasekhar goes to Sanatana Goswami. He doesn't know he's Sanatana Goswami, and says that the Lord is calling you, please come. And so Sanatana Goswami, being very pleased, he calls him the Muslim mendicant. Come in. He doesn't have a better name for him. He says, the Lord is calling you. So, man, very sweet exchange. These are verses 51 to 55. So sweet. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sees Sanatana Goswami. So as soon as he saw Sanatana Goswami, he embraces him. And he went into this ecstatic love. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Sanatana Goswami went into this ecstatic love. And as soon as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu touched Sanatana Goswami, Sanatana Goswami said, no, don't touch me. I am untouchable. I am very dirty. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would have nothing to do with it. And so he, after embracing him, holds his hand and walks him to a very nice elevated seat and sat him down right next to him. You can imagine 2 friends, sitting together after meeting after a long time like this. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was so ecstatic to see Sanatana Goswami that he seated him this way. And then, amazingly, after embracing him, after walking shoulder to shoulder to him, holding his hand, seating him next to him, what does he do? I wanted to read this verse. This is verse 55. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu began cleansing Sanatana Goswami's body with his own transcendental hand, Sanatana Goswami said, "Oh my Lord, please do not touch me." If somebody has not showered for 5, 6, 10 days and they come and see you, they'll say, "There's the bathroom, please take a shower." Then don't sit on my sofa, you'll make it dirty. Right? We'll be so antsy. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with his own transcendental hand, was cleansing the body of Sanatana Goswami. How much love Krishna has for his devotees, that his own transcendental hands cleaning. And the Lord, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then says, after Sanatana Goswami rejected, he said, I am touching you just to purify myself, because by the force of your devotional service, you can purify the whole universe. Rupa Goswami writes in Nectar of Devotion, in Nectar of Instruction, we should not judge by the external circumstances of a devotee. When we see that a devotee is quote-unquote dirty, that is even transcendental. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying, touching you, I am purifying myself. So you can see this mood that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was teaching us about how to approach Vaishnavas. It's very, very sweet, and how he interacts with them. So then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu goes on to explain in detail why this is the case. So we should not just whimsically go out and find a dirty person and start cleaning them with our transcendental hand. That is not the point. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explains why this is the right thing to do. And he says, saints of your caliber are themselves places of pilgrimage. Because of their purity, they are constant companions of the Lord, and therefore they can purify even the places of pilgrimage. We go to Govardhan and we put some dust on our head, right? We go to Vrindavan, we go to the banks of the Ganges, and we put the tilak. So here Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying, saints of your caliber, you are places of pilgrimage yourself. Then he goes on to say a couple verses later, by seeing you, by touching you, and by glorifying your transcendental qualities, one can perfect the purpose of all sense activity. This is the verdict of the revealed scriptures. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu quotes a verse. He said, Lord Krishna said, even though a person is a very learned scholar of Sanskrit Vedic literatures, he is not accepted as my devotee unless he is in pure devotional service. However, even though a person born in a low family of dog eaters, he is very dear to me if he is a pure devotee who has no motive to enjoy fruitive activity or mental speculation. Indeed, all respect should be given to him, and whatever he offers should be accepted. Such devotees are as worshipable as I am. So this is Lord Krishna himself saying that all respects should be given to such devotees. And he says such devotees are as worshipable as I am. The Kanishta Adhikari devotee, the first class neophytes, they don't know how to respect the Vaishnavas. They only respect Krishna in the deity form, but don't understand that actually what is most pleasing to Krishna is to serve his devotees. And why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu teaches us dasa, nudasa, nudasa, nudas. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continues, my dear Vaishnava, seeing a person like you is the perfection of one's eyesight. Touching your lotus feet is the perfection of the sense of touch, and glorifying your good qualities is the perfection of, is the tongue's real activity. For the material world, it is very difficult to find a pure devotee of the Lord. So just we see really wonderful explanation by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with the position of a pure devotee of the Lord, and how they should be received and approached, and why. Because they are so dear to Krishna. Krishna says, as worshipful I am. And so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu rendered this service of even cleaning him with his own hand. Something we ordinarily would think, materially contaminated. So then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructs Chandrasekhar that, take Sanatana Goswami and you should, shave him up, clean him up. So, in verse 70, Chandrasekhar then made Sanatana Goswami look like a gentleman. He took him to bathe in the Ganges, and afterwards he brought him a new set of clothes. Srila Prabhupada writes in that purport that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not like Sanatana Goswami's big beard and long hair. And so he asked Chandrasekhar to shave him up, get him cleaned up. And Srila Prabhupada speaks about how, we should also maintain ourselves in a very clean manner. Srila Prabhupada was very particular on this point. He wanted the devotees of ISKCON to be presented very nicely. He wanted, the Matajis to wear nice saris, the Prabhujis to wear, nice dhotis and kurtas and not look shabby. We should be clean cut and things should be very prim and proper, not like hippies, as he would say. So be happies, not hippies. So we see also here Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was not so fond of course, Sanatana Goswami was traveling for quite a bit of time and also serving in the government. So now he was cleaned up and shaven. But when Chandrasekhar offered him a new set of clothes, Sanatana Goswami, coming from a very opulent and royal background, right, being the prime minister, he did not accept the new set of clothes. And this was very pleasing to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Then the Maharashtrian Brahmana invites Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to lunch, and he doesn't accept the lunch, and he says, no, I'll go out and beg. I am a sannyasi. I should go out and do madhukari. So this also was very, very pleasing. Tapan Mishra also offers Sanatana Goswami some clothes, and then Sanatana Goswami finally says, give me one used dhoti. And so Tapan Mishra gives him one used dhoti, and he tears it up and makes two smaller outer garments and some undergarments and uses that as his clothing. So this was a very renounced mood. We see the beginning of Sanatana Goswami's very renounced mood. We talked about this in chapter 19. He and Rupa Goswami would sleep under a different tree each night, worried about being attached. Like this, Sanatana Goswami immediately goes into this renounced state. And this was very, very pleasing to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And then, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is seeing Sanatana Goswami all shaved up, wearing, an older dhoti, tied around in a very kind of mendicant fashion, in a simple outer covering, Sanatana Goswami, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu keeps looking at Sanatana Goswami's blanket. And he's just looking at it. And immediately Sanatana Goswami understood Chaitanya Mahaprabhu does not like this blanket. And so he went to the banks of the river, and there he saw one, sadhu who had just washed his torn quilt. And it was drying on the sand, and he said, Sanatana Goswami said, I'll trade you my blanket for your quilt. And the sadhu says, don't mess with me. You are a sadhu. You're joking with me. Who would trade such a valuable wool blanket for this torn quilt? And Sanatana Goswami said, no, seriously, I want to trade it. Please trade it. And the sadhu was like, okay, gladly. And so Sanatana Goswami brought back this torn quilt over his shoulders. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu inquired, what happened to your blanket? And then he explained, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu became very pleased. So we see in this that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu didn't even have to say anything about the blanket. It means that Sanatana Goswami was so surrendered and so in tune with the desire of his Supreme Lord that he didn't even have to speak to understand what was to be done. And this shows the highest mood of the relationship. The Ritz-Carlton Hotel Group, they have this credo card, and it talks about how, they want to anticipate the needs of guests. So before they ask for something, we should give it to them. Like that. It shows them. So Sanatana Goswami, his service to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was so perfect that even before Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had to say anything, he understood the mind and took great action. So these activities are very, very pleasing to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And thus, this is how Sanatana Goswami came and reached Varanasi. And now they are going to sit down and have a very important dialogue. And so we come to the point in these verses. They start, around verse 94, where Sanatana Goswami is going to speak with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And this will take us now the next 3.5 chapters, basically the remainder of this chapter and the next 3 chapters. This conversation is going to take place between Sanatana Goswami and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And they're going to cover many topics. But the summary of what they're going to speak about is Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami talks about in the 97th verse. They're going to talk about four things. Who is Krishna? So what is the position of the Supreme Lord? They're going to speak about this Madhurya Rasa, this conjugal rasa, one that is a little bit perplexing until we understand it in detail. So we'll talk about that. Then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is going to speak about Krishna's opulences. And then finally he's going to speak about the mellows of bhakti, the different experiences in devotional service. So those will be the four main topics. Now today we'll hear the first part is a little bit of a precursor to the first topic of who is Krishna. It's kind of a lead-in, and we'll see that. So now in 94, verse 94, we get to a very important point. So I wanted to read verse 94 and 95 and hear these verses, and we'll discuss something that sets us up for understanding the mood in which Sanatana Goswami approached this conversation and how we should approach this conversation in trying to understand and read it. So Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says in 94, being pleased with Sanatana Goswami, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu bestowed his causeless mercy upon him. By the Lord's mercy, Sanatana Goswami received the spiritual strength to inquire from him. Now the next verse. Formerly, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would ask Ramananda Roy spiritual questions, and by the Lord's causeless mercy, Ramananda Roy could properly reply. Now, by the Lord's mercy, Sanatana Goswami questioned the Lord, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally supplied the truth. So what's very interesting here is Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is making a very important point, but a little bit indirectly now, by referencing Ramananda Roy. So in the pastime of Ramananda Roy, it was Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was asking the questions, and Ramananda Roy was answering the questions. In this pastime, Sanatana Goswami is asking, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is responding. Now, in our ordinary understanding, we may think, oh, there's some difference, right? Ramananda Roy must be higher than Sanatana Goswami because Sanatana Goswami is in the position of answering, Sanatana Goswami is in the position of asking. But Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami makes a very important point that we should really internalize deeply. That being pleased with Sanatana Goswami, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu bestowed his causeless mercy upon him. What means in order for Sanatana Goswami to ask the questions, it was mercy placed upon him. Now when Ramananda Rai is being asked questions by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he kind of laughs and says, why you're asking me? Because whatever I speak, it is only you speaking. You have entered my heart and speaking. So it is as if you're asking yourself. And Ramananda Rai didn't think, oh, I am answering questions for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He knew it was only because he was empowered to speak that he could speak. And Sanatana Goswami is saying, it's only because I'm empowered to ask that I can ask. So either way, we are fully dependent on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the power to ask questions is coming from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and the power to answer the questions is coming from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And the principal point here is that everything, whatever ability we have, it is coming from Krishna. If something great happens, we should be happy that Krishna's plan was satisfied. Not that we did it. We were simply a vessel. If someone is drinking a wonderful thirst-quenching glass of water, they don't care what kind of cup it comes in. They care about the water. Similarly, we may be some cup, some vessel carrying a message. But the devotee understands this is what is good. So the devotee, if something great happens, yes, Krishna wanted it. His plan was fulfilled. And if something doesn't happen according to the devotee's desire, the devotee is also happy. Oh, good thing. Because Krishna's plan happened, mine didn't. Mine's full of flaws, but Krishna's plan prevailed again. So either way, the devotee is very happy. Because they know Krishna is the hero. Krishna is the enabler. So we may have some ideas. If they happen, we must know Krishna wanted it. If they didn't, Krishna had a better plan. And so in this way, Very important that this, who's asking, who's answering. They're both on the same platform. And so Krishna Goswami makes this very important point in these verses 94, 95, and 96. And understanding that it is by the potency of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that he was able to make inquiries. Now, in making inquiries, there are two important things that we must consider in asking questions. First, we must know what to ask. What is the thing to ask? Sanatana Goswami could have asked, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, what did you have for lunch yesterday? Might be interesting, but is there any real value in that? So, not just asking questions, but knowing what to ask. That is the difficult part and the very important part. And if Krishna has bestowed his mercy upon us, then we'll also know what to ask. And then the second aspect of inquiring is the mood of inquiry. So what to ask and how to ask. What and how. And so Krishna Kaviraj Goswami explains this again a little bit indirectly in these verses that we can discuss. So in verse 98 and 99, let's see the mood of Sanatana Goswami. The second aspect, the mood. Putting a straw in his mouth and bowing down. Sanatana Goswami clasped the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and humbly spoke as follows. Sanatana Goswami said, I was born in a low family, and my associates are all low-class men. I myself am fallen, and am the lowest of men. Indeed, I have passed my whole life fallen in the well of sinful materialism. Now, Sanatana Goswami is such a dear devotee that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was personally cleansing him just moments ago, personally seating next to him on an elevated seat. And what is his mood after that? I am the most fallen of persons. He says basically, I don't even know what to ask. So in the next verse, 100, he says, I do not know what is beneficial for me or what is detrimental. Nonetheless, in ordinary dealings, people consider me a learned scholar, and I'm also thinking of myself as such. So he is saying, I don't even know what to ask. People think I'm learned, and I'm so foolish that I think I am learned. But actually, I don't know. So you see this strong mood of humility. So now what to ask in this mood of humility? Right? What to ask? So in verse 101, we get the perfect question to put forth to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, to the spiritual master. He says, out of your causeless mercy, you have delivered me from the materialistic path. Now by the same causeless mercy, please tell me what my duty is. Now we know from the meeting at Ramkeli, Sanatana Goswami and Rupa Goswami wanted to leave their government work and join Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That was their desire. So Sanatana Goswami is now saying, you have delivered me from that. But he doesn't say, now that I'm delivered that, can I do this service? Can I travel with you? Can I do this? He fully surrenders and says, tell me my duty. Tell me what I should do. Not looking for sanction for his own desires, but actually truly inquiring, what is it that I should do? What is my duty? Very, very important mood that we can approach Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Krishna, and the spiritual master, the Guru. And Sanatana Goswami is showing us this perfect mood of approaching by this very important verse and phrase, please tell me what my duty is. Then he asks, a very basic question. Who am I? Why do the threefold miseries give me trouble? If I do not know this, how I can be benefited? And then he shows his great mood of not knowing what to ask. He says, actually, I do not know how to inquire about the goal of life and the process of obtaining it. Being merciful upon me, please explain to me all these truths. So, Sanatana Goswami has now presented himself in the perfect mood. And because he has done so, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is going to speak so elaborately. See, the Guru, the spiritual master, doesn't speak until he knows that our heart is open to receive the knowledge. What is the point of speaking? If we think we already know, then Guru says, okay, you already know. Go do it. But when our heart and mind is truly open to know, then we'll speak. And Sanatana Goswami has established a perfect path for us to follow in this process of approaching. And because he has done so wonderfully, we'll be the great beneficiaries by hearing very detailed instructions now that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is going to come. Now Chaitanya Mahaprabhu quickly says that Lord Krishna has bestowed his full mercy upon you, so all these things are known to you. He says, Sanatana Goswami, you already know all these things. The Supreme Lord has already given you all this mercy. So you can see that, and that's actually a fact. But despite that, the mood of Sanatana Goswami remains very humble. He has a very elevated personality. Already knew all this, but still remained very humble. He says, since you possess Lord Krishna's potency, you certainly know these things. However, it is the nature of the sadhu to inquire. So like this he continues. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu now is going to begin to speak. And so he's going to speak right now about the spirit soul, the living entity, and the choice the living entity has between engaging in spirit or matter. He talks about the results of that material attachment and then how to get out of this mess. So it's a very practical set of instructions that he's speaking, and it's really the introduction before we get to the first of the four main topics that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is going to speak about. So we'll just conclude with just a brief overview of verses 108 through about 150, where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is speaking this. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explains beginning that you are a spirit soul, and it is a living entity's constitutional position to be servant of Krishna. That is the eternal position. But we are considered the marginal potency. And why marginal? Marginal because the jiva can either associate with spirit or associate with matter. Though it is of spirit energy, because the living entity has free will, it sometimes identifies with matter. And when it does, what happens? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explains. One acquires a material body, one goes through great suffering of the threefold miseries, difficulties of the mind, difficulties of the body, difficulties of natural disasters, and ultimately they become overcome by fear. So when the living entity chooses to associate with matter, it creates a very dangerous and difficult situation for that living entity. And conversely, when the living entity associates with spirit, one experiences unlimited bliss. So we have the choice to decide what we want to do. And so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is speaking about these different pastimes. So in verse 117 we see, forgetting Krishna, the living entity has been attracted by the external feature from time immemorial. Therefore the illusory energy gives him all kinds of misery in his material existence. So there's a couple of important points here that we sometimes ask, and Srila Prabhupada is commenting on. Two things. One, we have forgotten our relationship with Krishna. So he opens the purport by saying, when the living entity forgets his constitutional position as eternal servant of Krishna, he is immediately entrapped by the illusory external energy. So why is Maya fooling us? Because we have forgotten our relationship with Krishna. And then Prabhupada comments later in this purport, how long has this been going on? He says, since time immemorial. It's indicated by the word anadi that we have been forgetful of our relationship with Krishna for so long, we can't even remember. And then Prabhupada makes a very beautiful statement that we are in competition with Krishna. It's like, what? This is the last sentence of the purport of verse 117. One should understand that due to his desire to enjoy himself in competition with Krishna, the living entity comes into material existence. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Srila Prabhupada are explaining why we came here. We should know this very clearly, because if we don't know why, then we won't know how to undo it. So what is it? We're trying to enjoy ourselves in competition with Krishna. Why you? Why not me? We said to Krishna. So that is the root cause of our existence. In the next verse, Srila Prabhupada speaks about the Nitya Mukta, however. That one who is not materially infected and who does not forget Krishna as his master is called Nitya Mukta. In other words, one who is eternally liberated from material contamination. So we are one of the few, actually the majority of living entities are Nitya Mukta. They never forget their relationship with Krishna. We are in the minority, and not the good minority, because we have made a mistake. We have forgotten our relationship with Krishna. Srila Prabhupada speaks about this Nitya Mukta in the purport of verse 118 to suggest that that not everybody makes the mistake we made to compete with Krishna's happiness, to try to be separate from it. But we chose to, and thus we are in this material world. And what is the result? When the living entity is attracted by the material energy, which is separate from Krishna, he is overpowered by fear. This is the result. We are overpowered by fear. Because he is separated from the Supreme Personality Godhead by the material energy, his conception of life is reversed. Everything he sees is opposite. In other words, instead of being the eternal servant of Krishna, he becomes Krishna's competitor. Right? So this verse goes on to say, and then at the end of this verse, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives how to get out of it, how to undo all this. What do? To nullify this mistake, one who is actually learned in advance worships the Supreme Personality of Godhead as his spiritual master, worshipable deity, and source of life. He thus worships the Lord by the process of unalloyed devotional service. So it is bhakti that is the process to regain our lost relationship, our forgotten relationship, I should say. It's not lost, it's forgotten. So yes, this is the mess we're in, overcome by fear due to the desire. And how to undo it? Unalloyed devotional service. Srila Prabhupada, the last line of this purport also is very beautiful. He says, quote, the only remedy is to revert to the service of the Lord, and thus be saved from material nature's unwanted harassment. We're all going through material nature's unwanted harassment even now, are we not? And how to get out of it? Just devotional service. Then in verse 120, we see the mercy of the devotee. If the conditioned soul becomes Krishna conscious by the mercy of saintly persons who voluntarily preach scriptural injunctions and help him become Krishna conscious, the conditioned soul is liberated from the clutches of Maya who give him up. So it's by the mercy of the devotee that we can become uplifted from this very dangerous position. And Srila Prabhupada says that when one engages in the Lord's devotional service, he becomes detached from material enjoyment. How many of us have wondered, am I making advancement in bhakti? How do I know if I'm making advancement in bhakti? Okay, I see one hand up. Yes, I see two hands up. Those hands go up. So Prabhupada says, right in the middle of the purport, this is the test by which one can tell whether he is advancing in devotional service. How? How detached we are from material enjoyment. To the extent I am detaching from my material desires, I absolutely am making progress in bhakti. So this is the measure Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur gave us with the boat party going to the wedding, which we will not recount here, but you all are aware of. This is the means. This is the test of our advancement and measure of progress. Now, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu makes a next important point. So, the living entity is chosen to identify with matter, forgetting Krishna, competing with him. We become overcome with fear, subject to the threefold miseries of devotional, threefold miseries of life. How to get out of it? Bhakti. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then goes on to say, the conditioned soul cannot revive his Krishna consciousness by his own effort. But out of the causeless mercy, Lord Krishna compiled the Vedic literature and its supplements to Puranas. So we can't do it on our own. And then, very powerful verse, which we read at the very beginning. We'll just reread the verse again. 3 agents come to help us overcome this material entanglement. The forgetful conditioned soul is educated by Krishna through the Vedic literatures. 1, the realized spiritual master. 2, and the super soul. So these 3, Guru, Sadhu, Shastra, in different ways. So Srila Prabhupada, as we read in the purport, that the conditioned soul takes help from Shastra. Shastra guides us in the process, gets instructed by the spiritual master, the Guru, and by the super soul within. So Krishna is providing so many different opportunities, not just one, out of his causeless love for us, to help lift us from this ocean of suffering and detangle us from all of this, so that we can experience the bliss. So then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu goes on to explain the content of Vedic Shastra. So he says the Vedic literatures give information about the living entity's eternal relationship with Krishna, which is called Sambandha, the living entity's understanding of this relationship and his acting in it accordingly is called Abhideya. Returning home back to Godhead is the ultimate goal of life and is called Prayojana. So this is a very important context, is Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana. So what the Vedic literatures tell us, which the Guru teaches us, and the Super Soul inspires us, is what is my relationship with Krishna? That is the foundation. Once I know my relationship, then how do I act in that relationship? That is Abhideya. That is to do devotional service. And what is the result of acting in that relationship? Why should I do it? That is Prayojana, the ultimate goal of life. So then, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu establishes and removes any doubt for us. If you ask 10 people, what is the ultimate goal of life? How many varieties of answers you'll get? Probably 11. Right? That is just the nature. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in verse 125 gives us what is the real ultimate wealth we can acquire. He says devotional service or sense activity for the satisfaction of the Lord is called Abhideya, because it can develop one's original love of Godhead, which is the goal of life. This goal is the living entity's topmost interest and greatest wealth. Thus one attains the platform of transcendental loving service unto the Lord. So the topmost wealth, the greatest thing we can acquire is love of God, Krishna Prem. So the Vedic literatures teach us our relationship, how to act in it, and how to achieve this greatest wealth. And that is the value of Shastra that is imparted to us through Guru Parampara and by inspiration from the Super Soul. These 3 combine and teach us these 3 things: Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana. So this topmost goal is most important. So I just wanted to read the last paragraph of this purport of verse 125. Everyone wants to achieve life's ultimate goal, but due to being absorbed in material energy, we waste our time with sense gratification. Through the study of Vedic literatures, of which the essence is the Bhagavad Gita, one comes to Krishna consciousness. Thus one engages in devotional service called Abhideya. When the living entity actually develops love of Godhead, he has reached the ultimate goal, Prayojana. In other words, one who becomes fully Krishna conscious has attained the perfection of life. There's a perfect summary paragraph that Srila Prabhupada has presented. We've been wasting our time trying to find this perfection of life in useless sense enjoyment. But by understanding Sambandha Abhideya Prayojana, we can achieve the greatest of wealth, the greatest of accomplishment, and that is love of God. So we must cement very squarely. We have to establish a goal very clearly, and then from there we can work towards it. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is introducing in this top discussion the challenges that are faced by the materially afflicted, how to get rid of it, and ultimately what is the topmost goal we can achieve. So to further emphasize this point, he then gives a parable. He talks about a story to really illustrate this, and he gives the story of an astrologer who goes to visit a very poor person, and this poor person is very distressed because of their poverty, and the astrologer asks, "Why are you so unhappy?" And the astrologer says, "You are poor, but don't you know your father was very wealthy? But he didn't tell you where the wealth was because he passed away before he could tell you." So this is a parallel to, as the astrologer is telling this man about his wealth, our Shastra is explaining to us how to find our real wealth, which is the relationship with Krishna. Once we are interested to find it, the poor man was eager to hear from the astrologer because he had acknowledged his distressed condition. And thus the astrologer began to speak about the treasure, where it was. But we must first acknowledge, I am in a distressed condition in this material world. And then become eager to hear about how to find our treasure. So this distressed man was eager to hear from the astrologer. And the living entity, when they become convinced of the trappings of this material world, then they'll also be eager to hear from Shastra about where to find this treasure. Now Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continues on saying, just as the words of the astrologer, told the man about the treasure, it still needed to know exactly where to go. So similarly, the Vedic literature tells us about this connection with Krishna. So the astrologer said, this treasure is yours. It's yours because it's your father's. Similarly, Shastra tells us our relationship with Krishna is ours. Now, the poor man knowing about the treasure was not sufficient. He then had to know where to find it. So Sambandha, knowing my relationship of Krishna is one thing, but then I have to know how to act in it. Right? So the poor man knowing there's a treasure, great, but now how to find it. So our Shastra says, knowing the relationship is step one, then you must act in that relationship, and explains how to perform devotional service. And what is the purpose of performing devotional service? What is the purpose of acting in the knowledge of the astrologer to know where the treasure is? To go find that treasure. Right? And so, for the poor man, the treasure was this material wealth that will allow him to enjoy some so-called happiness. But for the goal of the devotee, what is the goal of that abhideya? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then explains in 142, just the last verse we'll read today. He says, the goal of love of God is not to become materially rich or free from material bondage. The real goal is to be situated in devotional service to the Lord and to enjoy transcendental bliss. So this is the real goal. Krishna is the central point of attraction, and his service is our activity. To attain the platform of love of Krishna, is life's ultimate goal. This is therefore Krishna, Krishna's service, and love of Krishna. These are the three great riches of life. Very beautifully explained, very clearly explained to us by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. To set our sights, just as the astrologer told the man, this treasure is waiting for you. Here it is, and here how you can find it. He said, don't dig on the southern side, don't dig on the western side, don't dig on the northern side. You make a small hole from the eastern side, and you'll access the treasure. Similarly, our Vedic Shastra, Guru and Super Soul, will guide us that don't approach the goal this way, that way, or any way. Approach it this way, through the process of unalloyed pure devotional service. and you will achieve the greatest of bliss, the greatest of happiness, the greatest of riches, Krishna and his service and love of God. So this is where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has taken us to so far, and now he will begin to speak about Krishna himself and who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, sorry for going very, very long today, but we had a lot of verses to cover, so thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda ki jai. Any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, very, very beautiful class. I mean, really love the class so much, the way you've explained, because I know it's so heavy philosophy, and Srila Prabhupada's purpose are so rich. It's just that the dull mind, like mine, was not able to understand it. But now, with your guidance, we are able to, at least I'm able to personally appreciate it so much more. Very grateful for that. Just a small thing I liked was, if I may say, I
Yes.
just wanted to say what I, and always whenever hear that pastime of the blanket pastime which you talked about, Sanatana Goswami, how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you said he was just looking at it, he didn't say anything, but by just by his simple gesture, how Sanatana Goswami was able to understand his mind and act upon it. So that is I think the mood that a devotee should probably try to imbibe. That without getting the instructions, if we can follow to the cause. But the question is here, without getting the instructions, following it, one may be sometimes misses because we might think that we are doing it, but in the right way, but we don't know, right, Prabhuji? So, in such a case,
Yeah, when in doubt, ask. So if we're not sure, we should ask. And Sanatana Goswami is asking questions, as we see, but he knew for sure what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mood was in this instance, so he did it. And again, that is what happens when we become very fully surrendered to Guru and Krishna. They inspire us to take action. It doesn't even have to come through a personal instruction or through any what we think about direct means, but it is just as potent. So if we have some doubts, we should ask. And I didn't comment on it, but since you brought that topic up, the idea of that blanket, it's very indicative for us that Sanatana Goswami had given up his clothing, had taken to the process of Madhukari, and it was his last material hankering. And the point that's being made by this example is that the small things sometimes grow into big things. So we should be very mindful. Sometimes we think, what's the harm? What's the harm with one wool blanket? I've already done this, that, and the other. Well, the harm is that it can ultimately grow into something big, and that's the danger. And so what we learn from this is we should snuff it out completely. All of those desires we should work to ultimately detach from. Don't think, I've given up most of them, the rest of them are okay. That's the important point that we didn't quite talk about. Thank you, Mataji, for sharing your wonderful realizations. Very grateful.
thank you, Prabhuji. And one more question I had. One question. First of all, two things. When you had told today, the way you said it, Prabhuji, that questions, the mood that we are asking the question and what we are asking now, be very, very skeptical on asking the question because we don't know whether the mood is correct, or maybe I'm faltering in the mood sometimes, or maybe the question is correct. That is my first one. Second thing was you mentioned in the past time that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu he said that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said that what was it? That a pure devotee is as worshipable as me. So, and we know that even the Kanishta Bhikari is one who doing pure devotional service. So that would mean that every devotee is worshipable, Prabhuji. If that's what is the mood, what do we understand from this? Thank you.
So the first one is that, you know, what should be my mood, and you know, we don't become, you know, oh, I can't ask questions now because I don't know if my mood is right, or I don't know if I'm asking. No, we should not. We should continue to submit ourselves to the inquiry, but we should try to inculcate this mood of humility. It's not that, you know, what we're trying to do is take lessons from Sanatana Goswami and how to ask, just as Arjuna did in the beginning of chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita. Right? So we should always ask our questions and ask them with the mood to know, not with the mood to challenge or debate or to show I know more than this or that. You know, those are the things that, you know, we want to avoid. And you know, in these sanghas, we always have wonderful question answer sessions. And you know, again, you know, what to ask. Well, by practice, we'll start to learn what to ask. So these are the no risk environments. Just ask. There's no downside. These are the you know, no risk. But you know, by learning, we'll ultimately understand. Okay, maybe that's not so relevant, but this is. But when in doubt, just ask. That's the best thing to do. Always the best course of action. And slowly we'll, you know, begin. Because if we never ask questions, we'll never learn the art of asking. But the point is, we should understand that there is an art, that there is a way, right? And that we should, in time, just like chanting. If I wait to try to chant perfectly and never try it, I'll never chant perfectly. The point is, I'm trying, even though I'm not chanting perfectly, and slowly by doing it, I'll get better. Similarly, in asking questions, by knowing what the goal is, I'll start here and let me try it at least. You know, make sure, yes, I am just truly trying to know. You know, that's the main point of humility when we ask. You know, is that, and you know, in those environments, ask what we want. In terms of the Kanishthadhikari and the understanding they're all worshipable, you know, the point of the matter is that you know, all living entities, the Uttama Adhikari respects all living entities so much and sees all of them as greater than him or her that they can't even preach because they don't know who to preach to, because they see everybody is elevated to them. That is a humility they take. But to practically preach now, they come down to the Madhyama Adhikari level. And at the Madhyama Adhikari level, we know they have 4 relationships. 2, those who are, you know, in the you know, lower position in developing but are innocent, they show mercy to. They make friends with their peers. They render service to their superiors, offer obeisances, and they avoid the envious. So they understand how to navigate that environment. So in terms of our mood, our internal mood should be one of respect for all living entities, all personalities. And, you know, from a practical standpoint, you know, we may choose where we, you know, kind of gather and direct our association. But internally is important. We should be, you know, we should not harbor this person, that person, and start doing that. That's not good for our consciousness, nor is it you know, beneficial for our development in spiritual life. At the end of the day, we are the most fallen, and simply trying to, you know, grow ourselves in devotional service in that way. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Hare
Hare Krishna.
Hare.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
I have a question. Like you said that all the ideal situation for a person should be that they should think that everybody is above them on a spiritual level. Then how can we navigate in this like material world with the samta, like everyone is equal, or rather they are superior to us?
Yeah, again, I said that's the platform of the Uttamadhikari. That is a very elevated platform that we cannot try to imitate. But don't take that so literally in terms of the practical application. When we you can take that the wrong way and say, oh, then I can, if I'm trying to learn the process of devotional service, I can hear from Srila Prabhupada, I can hear from somebody else, I can hear from somebody else, and then what happens? My brain becomes khichdi, and I don't know what to do, right? Because one is saying this, one is saying, so you if you take that literally, you can say, oh, everybody's equal. Well, that's not from the consciousness should refrain from judging. But practically speaking, we know Srila Prabhupada is giving us such pure mercy, and I can at least say it is the most magnificent and most magnanimous mercy. Now, okay, call me biased, that's okay, but that's my opinion, and so I'm going to gravitate and hear from Srila Prabhupada exclusively, and follow his instructions and serve him through Guru Parampara exclusively. But it doesn't mean I disrespect others or I disrespect other ideas, but my consciousness, my affinity, my love, I'm going to dedicate to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Srila Prabhupada, Rupa Goswami, the coming in as Guru Parampara, because that's where I have my conviction. So it's about again having that understanding of how I'm going to shape my activities, and then also what I'm going to view externally. But I can't render service to all. I can't follow all. If I do, I go nowhere. And
Yeah, that I agree, Prabhuji, because we try to be very mindful of listening to the shastras by others as well, because half of the time half-cooked stories or theories are being told. So it's a dangerous path to tread on. So
it's
better
very,
to go.
it's very dangerous. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that's why he's so strict in that teaching. Don't hear from anybody else. Don't do that. So we must know where and also to Mataji's point, where we should render our practical service, right? Because you can render it in a means, and I guess I'll say it. We don't, in our immature state, it's hard to know who's pure and who's not, right? So we just have to remember we can be fooled. So stick to Srila Prabhupada's teachings and all will be perfect.
Thank you, Hare Krishna Prabhuji, and thank you for continuing this Chaitanya Caritamrita. It was our desire, and we know we are taking so much of your time. Sometimes we feel guilty. We are encroaching your family time. So sorry for that, but we're very grateful to you and family, Mataji and your kids. Thank you.
I am very grateful that you are letting me even do this, and you're bestowing all of your mercy upon me, because I am the beneficiary of this. So I'm grateful for the chance to read all of this and study along with all of you. So, and many better presenters of this information, but somehow you're tolerating what we're discussing here. So I'm grateful for that. It's very sweet. Chaitanya Caritamrita is so sweet and so wonderful.
Thank you, Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
We have some online questions.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, can you explain the role and activities of a sadhu in neophyte devotees' devotional journey?
Can you repeat the question again?
Sure. Can you explain the role and activities of a sadhu in neophyte devotees' devotional journey?
Yeah. So the beauty of devotional service is the beginning and the middle and the end is all the same. It's chanting the holy names of the Lord. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came and taught us one thing: chant the holy names of the Lord. And so we chant in the neophyte stage, in the middle stage, and the most advanced stage. Chanting of the holy names is the principal process by which we awaken this dormant love of Krishna in our heart, and that is the principal activity. There are other aspects of devotional service that Rupa Goswami explains in Nectar of Devotion, but it centers around always remembering Krishna and never forgetting him, and chanting is the primary means to do that. So it's what we do, the activities are the same, but the consciousness of how we do those changes as we progress in our development. When we chant in the neophyte stage, we chant sometimes out of duty, out of a vow to Guru, or some commitment. When we chant in the pure stage, we chant out of an extraordinary taste and spontaneous love for the holy names. Both activities are chanting, but the experience progresses as one goes from neophyte to mature stage. Next question.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, when a person's starting his or her devotional journey, is the service attitude the foundation to come out of clutches of Maya to understand Lord? Or is it a different treatment or different level of devotees to come out of clutches of Maya to understand Lord through association of sadhu, shastra, and guru?
So, overcoming Maya, Krishna says, Devi Hesha Gunamaye Mama Maya Duratraya. That Mamavaya Prabhatyante, that we must surrender to Krishna. So surrendering to Krishna is the key to Mayamitam Tarantite, to quickly overcome this divine energy of Krishna's. So it is through surrender to the Supreme Lord that this happens. Krishna says that you surrender to my external representative, the Guru. So surrendering to Guru is also a means of surrendering to Krishna. So this process is really about ultimately surrendering to Krishna and engaging in the process of devotional service. So that is how we understand the process to be. Okay. Anything else?
Thank you, Prabhuji, actually, for taking up this easy class again. Really grateful, Prabhuji. Once more. Thank you.
Okay. Laura Mataji, do you have a question, or is it just going off mute? I'm not able to hear you. Go ahead, Mataji. Yeah, it's not coming through. Maybe you can message and then I'll answer it that way. Somehow it's not coming through audio. Okay. So if there are no more questions, thank you very much again. Sincerely grateful to all the assembled Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis for this opportunity to discuss Chaitanya Caritamrita, and beg your forgiveness for any mistakes I may have made in trying to summarize these very potent and beautiful verses, and look forward to hopefully, Krishna willing, allowing us to do it again and again and again. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda ki jai. Hare Krishna.